And what we're focused on is changes, particularly in AI, particularly the last 2 to 3 years, that are making a really significant impact on manufacturing, as it's already beginning to do so in areas as diverse as healthcare, retail, and recruitment. I'm going to talk about one area is called physical AI, but before I get to that point, I want to kind of set the scene with respect to it. The term chat GPT moment was coined by Jensen Huang, his chief executive of NVIDIA, and he's really good at marketing, and he's highlighting some of the developments in his company with respect to this sector. So, as I said, what I want to do is briefly introduce the iForm Centre, what we do as a Research Ireland funded centre, then talk about the context in terms of AI and advanced manufacturing within Ireland, then a little bit from the literature with respect to scientific discovery and the use of AI and its potential, and finally then a particular focus on the physical AI, this what we call the chat GPT moment with respect to the technology. So Research Ireland funds the iForm Advanced Manufacturing Centre. Its core focus is on the use of digital technology in advanced manufacturing, looking at ways of enhancing processing efficiencies. We have 9 partner institutions associated with the centre, and within these research centres, you have core research, which is more academic, and we've picked the area of advanced manufacturing for that. And then we also work closely with respect to industry partners in a much broader range of advanced manufacturing. And what we do is we combine the experimental with material modeling with digitalization. Since we were established in 2017, we've already had 60 PhDs who have obtained their PhD through the iForm Centre, and currently we have over 100 PhD and postdoc researchers working with us. We have secured very substantial amounts of EU and industry funding as shown here, and many of our projects are with both small to medium-sized enterprises, but also larger companies in areas that as diverse as medical device through to pharmaceuticals to food production. So again, I have one slide just to give a little bit of a context in terms of Ireland and its advanced manufacturing capabilities. I think most of you will be aware of this. Like our expertise, particularly folks in the area of pharmaceuticals, in medical devices, in food manufacturing, and we're a leader in some of these, as shown on this slide. All of these, however, involve a material change. So in other words, you're either looking at ways of producing polymers, and those polymers in turn will be used to fabricate a device. How do we do this more efficiently, and how can we become much more competitive internationally with respect to our manufacturing capability? Why is this important? Well, if you look at this Eurostat figure or graph showing the relative importance of advanced manufacturing or manufacturing to European countries, you can see Ireland there at the bottom. It's so important to us as a country, and that's reflected in about 260,000 people employed directly in the sector, and with exports of around 224 billion euros. So it's a really important sector for the Irish economy, and it's something that is critical that we continue to be successful at. The IBEX is Ireland's largest lobby and business representative group, and they produce a yearly report on manufacturing in Ireland. And the report from the end of last year highlighted the growing importance of AI. You can see the text here. Around 52% of businesses were already see it as a priority, with 97% planning adoption. That's almost everyone is looking at AI in terms of that adoption. Now, part of this is because there's so much in the media with respect to AI. How can we do this more effectively, and what are the results to date? Well, when we actually drill down and look at Ireland in terms of World Economic Forum data, what you can see here that actually adoption in Ireland is only around 15%, which for the type of economy we have, which is higher value manufacturing, is relatively low, or we should be much better. For example, Denmark is nearly twice the level of adoption that Ireland has. And when we look at output, say from the graph on the right is from the business research company, they, amongst others, anticipate really rapid growth. Around 43% is the growth rate they anticipate in terms of the adoption of AI going forward. So this is a technology that's likely to have a major impact. Ireland has a middle rating position. Now, part of that is the impact of its adoption probably by cutting edge larger companies and the difficulties particularly SMEs have in adopting the technology. So there's a kind of a core piece there that we need to support. iForm as a centre has been looking at this, and we've worked closely with Digital Manufacturing Ireland in an area called human-centric manufacturing. So human-centric manufacturing is looking at the well-being, skills, and safety of workers working in manufacturing and having that as being the core. How do we make AI easier to adopt, more acceptable by those working in the sector, and how can we support it? So we've done, my colleagues in the Smurfit Business School, Orla Byrne and Virginia Stewart, have been carrying out surveys of companies to get their feedback in terms of adoption of AI, this human-centric manufacturing, with support, as I said, of DMI. And as you'd expect, job displacement anxiety is right up there in terms of that fear of change, as is what is the impact of this likely to be on people's jobs, as is how strategic the introduction is within the company. In other words, what approaches are being used, and what is the likely outcome in terms of it? Now, the ironic piece around this is that there will be job displacement. However, it is likely that those companies that adopt AI will be more productive. And if they're more productive, the chance of them continuing to be leaders in the field will be enhanced. On the bottom right there, you see this kind of three-sided graph, and in the middle of Industry 5. I would talk about that in a second, but the human-centric element is really important in terms of introduction and these digital tools. The Economist had an article nearly 3 years ago now in terms of the AI revolution in science, and they highlighted two main areas. One is that of analysis of existing hypotheses and humans, this literature-based discovery as a way of interdisciplinary innovation. So in other words, those practitioners in the field can often be expert in one area, but there could be developments in a separate area that could help. They also talk about robot scientists, and this is the idea that the AI can be used to inform an approach which robots would then go out and carry out experiments. And as is highlighted here, they avoid kind of bias in terms of that. So those are two highlight areas. And they also went on to talk about its potential. So they gave an example of batteries, where they looked through 200,000 stable crystalline compounds, inorganic compounds, and through that analysis, identified 5 with potential. So it's identifying which direction the research should go. In terms of materials, it's been a rapid increase in the number of materials that are known in terms of that could be potentially stable. And finally, in terms of pharmaceuticals, the combination of Google DeepMind and AlphaFold, they've developed a protein, and in just 30 days, that protein has been shown to have potential in terms of liver cancer treatment. So the idea of using AI, taking the information that's available and trying to identify where, for example, in this case, it's protein design, could be potentially beneficial. Since 2003, there's been a rapid development in this area. And in January this year, it's been reported that AI designed drugs are firstly passing through preclinical phases much more quickly. They're also safer, 80 to 90% success rate compared with 40 to 65% historically. And in the overall process, they've nearly doubled the actual success of drugs passing through the process. So clearly, the technology in that short time has demonstrated considerable potential. It's therefore not surprising that the likes of Lilly and NVIDIA have combined together. In my presentation, you'll hear a good lot about NVIDIA, and really they are the leading AI company, probably because of their success in their GPU architecture, which is specifically designed for AI tasks. And so many companies are trying to partner with them as they move forward. But taking the example of Lilly here, they talked about an AI-driven drug discovery laboratory. You can see the scale in terms of the investment in the processing. Now, that processing requires enormous costs and enormous amounts of energy in terms of achieving results. And the application areas, not surprisingly, drug discovery, also manufacturing, use of robotics and creating digital twins, and also the area of clinical trials for personalized medicine. Going back to Jason Wang and NVIDIA, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, he coined the term the ChatGPT moment. Initially, it was coined for robotics and their robotic systems, but then it became more broadly the ChatGPT moment for manufacturing. And it uses a term called physical AI, which is where these robots have the ability to reason, sense the world, and plan action in terms of what needs to be done. And rather than programming robots for every action, the idea is that they, in the same way as humans do, perceive and understand and react within a given context and situation they're in. Looking at this as in a context, we talk about where we get a step change in terms of approaches to industrialization as an industrial revolution. And the slide here shows examples. So Industry 1 was steam. Industry 2 was the conveyor belt. Think of Henry Ford. The next one was the use of computers and automation. Then Industry 4, which was very much around IoT, digitalization, AI. And then it was decided, well, we need to bring in the human side, this human-centric piece, human collaboration plus sustainability. The likelihood is that AI will cause a significant disruption in terms of how manufacturing is done. Timing is the key question, though, as to how long it takes. Just to highlight in terms of Industry 4, ignoring that human sustainability piece, Industry 4, we talk about IoT, AI, cyber-physical, big data, 3D printing as being core technologies for that. And their impact then is, take the supply chain. If you can predict what the supply chain is doing, how much inventory do you have, how things are selling, and kind of you actually feed that through the system in an automatic way. That's the impact that digitalization has. It opens up an understanding in terms of that process, and it's key to efficiency as we go forward. Within the iFoam Center, this is core to our technology. On the slide here is some example of work that we've been involved with respect to looking at anomaly detection. On the top left is a printed part with an anomaly in it. Can we look at different ways of identifying that anomaly and how sensitive it is? In this case, we use the unsupervised stray algorithm and also autoencoder type of approaches in terms of looking at that. So we kind of look at data and try to learn from that and to do it in close to real time. And Carl will talk more about this in the next presentation. Where this is applied effectively, it can be very really effective with respect to reducing wastage, improving efficiency. And the Amberg plant from Siemens is taken as a world-class example of this. You can see the number of parts, 50 million items every year, 99% reliability, 100% traceability. So the integration of digitalization, digital tools, all the way through the plant, from edge computing through to AI, IoT, RFID, and so forth in terms of devices through that plant. But that's what's been to date. But the physical AI piece is something different. And I want to talk about that in a second. Before I do so, just to mention that Ireland has its own success stories in this regard. The World Economic Forum, for example, highlights the Global Lighthouse Network, which is a network of what to consider best-in-class companies worldwide. Ireland has two, the Coca-Cola plant in Ballina and this Janssen large molecule facility down in Cork. On the screen, you can see some examples of the impact their digitalization AI approach has made in terms of reduced inventory, process failure reductions, reduced emissions of CO2, again, through the combination of digitalization. And on the bottom left, you can see talk about modeling. And I would say the modeling piece, it's combined with the fabrication or the synthesis here, combined with digitalization, is absolutely key in terms of this space. In the time I've got, I can only concentrate on one area of technology, which I want to kind of illustrate to you has been key to the integration of physical AI or the potential of physical AI as we move forward. That's computer vision. And it's the use of computer systems to be able to, obviously with vision, but also to obtain data and to then look at that data, to reconstruct it and interpret what's going on. And on the screen, you see a conveyor belt and you can see some waste plastic items from consumer waste. And you can see that on each of them, there's a kind of a little label. One is PET and green and so forth, where it itemized both the chemistry and also the type of material that's there. This was developed by a company called Recycline. This is that system working in real time. So the speed at which it can identify and capture data is immense. So combine this with an ability to be able to select and remove those polymer pieces will obviously help here in terms of consumer waste. And when you look at the vision system and you kind of look at its development from the period 1963 up to around 2000s, it was slow. You had vision systems that began to give some indication, but generally you would look at issues afterwards, say, okay, what is going on? But since 2000s, you've got much more development in terms of cameras, in terms of systems to analyze data. And from 2020, you can see here, AI on the edge vision systems, ability to look at synthetic data in a simulated environment, the energy efficiency and miniaturization, its cost of the vision systems has gone down, and the ability to use 5G, for example, in terms of an architecture to take that information out has improved enormously. Hence, the massive increase in use of vision systems for manufacturing, for example. But as we move forward, it's where further developments are taking place. It's the compatibility of the vision systems with the robot, with the resource planning, where you can get so much more information rather than just image data. It's the use of no-code architecture, so it makes it easier for those working on the plant to be able to make changes. The foundation models are a lot more robust, so if you might be analyzing one type of product today, it can be switched over very easily to the next product, and that flexibility in terms of adjust between different products and detection and inspection in terms of this work. So if you are investing very considerably in terms of these systems, they're a lot more flexible, their cost is coming down, and they're producing enormous amounts of data, and the ability to analyze that data is critical. One of the leaders in terms of this space is Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and they had a technical report from January last year where they talked about welding in the nuclear industry and for heavy shipbuilding. Mitsubishi make a lot of ships. So what they highlighted was, or their problem was that basically they couldn't get enough welders. Welding is a really difficult job. It's very highly skilled, but the actual weld material is carcinogenic. It's a kind of, and basically this combination is very difficult in terms of those operating in the sector, and they would like to be further away from the actual welding itself. So the combination of vision systems plus AI has allowed them to develop automatic welding equipment. Now, it's initially been applied in areas such as nuclear reactor facilities, where again, there's much bigger health and safety issues, but it allows them to have an operator to manage a number of welders simultaneously. So productivity is going up very considerably in terms of this approach. How did they do it? Well, firstly, they basically have what they call their MASART behavior analysis AI system. They can analyze the best welders and look at the approach that they are taking and translate that into what the operator does. Again, those vision systems that I talked about enhance detection and the quality of what is being detected. Then they can use AI to estimate what needs to be done and to make corrections in terms of taking the information they have from the process. And it can be done in real time. So that real-time capability is there. So that's an example where it's the beginnings of physical AI in terms of its approach. Obviously, productivity is going to increase enormously in a situation where in this particular sector, they're having real difficulty getting people to take on these roles because of the health and safety and the type of environment that people are working in. So you can see the advantages and the push towards this, but it's also the reliability and reproducibility of the process. I began talking about the Amberg plant and Siemens in January this year signed an agreement with NVIDIA to address looking at advanced manufacturing. And it's very significant. Look, you're taking a world leader in advanced manufacturing with a world leader in AI, and this short video helps to explain what they're about.
Breakthroughs in physical AI are letting AI move from screens to our physical world. And just in time, as the world builds factories of every kind for chips, computers, life-saving drugs, and AI. As the global labor shortage worsens, we need automation powered by physical AI and robotics more than ever. This, where AI meets the world's largest physical industries, is the foundation of NVIDIA and Siemens partnership. For nearly 2 centuries, Siemens has built the world's industries. And now it is reinventing it for the age of AI. Siemens is integrating NVIDIA CUDA-X libraries, AI models, and Omniverse into its portfolio of EDA, CAE, and digital twin tools and platforms. Together, we're bringing physical AI to the full industrial lifecycle. From design and simulation to production and operations. We stand at the beginning of a new industrial revolution, the age of physical AI, built by NVIDIA and Siemens for the next age of industry.
Okay, so that's an example of what NVIDIA are working to do in terms of this space, in this case with Siemens. Sorry, but going forward, when we just look at this physical AI, why now? Why is this happening at this stage? Well, firstly, physical AI systems that operate and interact with the physical world rather than software and digital environments. But it's supported by, as I said, computer vision. That's the speed at which you can actually evaluate vision data. Modeling, material modeling, physical modeling, and simulation are critical in terms of predicting how things will behave, and also in terms of developing models which can use other test data. Then finally, the area of robotics in terms of better sensors, better materials, and the ability for AI to interact with them. So that physical AI has potential to make a massive difference. Now, unsurprisingly, there are a number of very well-funded startups addressing this space, and I'm going to give examples of two of those. The first one is Periodic Labs. Periodic Labs from California. Its founders are from OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Meta. They currently have about 30 people employed. Initial valuation or initial input, 300 million, is currently valued about $1 billion. And what they've done is they're focused on addressing a big problem in superconductivity. As you know, superconductivity is, you have to go to really cold temperatures to do it. Can we increase the temperature? Can we develop new materials that will allow us to work at higher temperatures for superconductive materials? So what they're going about it is to work in AI in terms of material discovery. Then they're getting their robots to actually carry out synthesis, and then their large language models to analyze this. So they're getting what are good and bad performance data, and they're doing this continuously. So it's very much working with co-pilots in a closed loop self-driving laboratories with AI agents, and to propose hypotheses and to analyze experiments. So it's that combination of AI plus materials plus modeling is critical. The second example is called Project Prometheus. Prometheus was the god who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. So an inauspicious name. So Jeff Bezos has come out of retirement to act as the co-chief executive officer of this company. They talk about it as AI for the physical economy, and the objective is to build AI models that understand and simulate the real world. How are they going about it? Well, they started by hiring. It's the same company that they're taking those hiring from, OpenAI, DeepMind, and Meta. I believe that the pay rates for those employees is stratospheric in terms of it, because there's so few people in the world who can have that kind of expertise. With that 6.2 billion, they've also been able to invest enormously in computational hardware. NVIDIA's high-end GPU chips being one example of this. In terms of infrastructure, they have laboratories in California, but also in London and Zurich. So they're picking quite expensive places to locate, because that's where they can identify people with skills in this space. And finally, what they're doing is they're purchasing some startups and smaller companies who have key technologies. And one of these is General Agents. General Agents, as shown here, have their ACE technology, which is a low latency video imaging, 0.3 seconds latency compared with 6 seconds for OpenAI. If you try to get a robot to operate on that packaging line I showed earlier on in 6 seconds, it misses everything. If you do it in 0.3 seconds, it can pick up almost everything. So that's key in terms of this technology. Where is this likely to go? Now, this is pure speculation based on what people are saying when you look up Prometheus, Project Prometheus on the web. But one area that they feel it's likely to go once the initial products are out of the laboratory will be into a beta site. And where better than Rivian trucks, which Jeff Bezos has a very significant share in. So if you can get the robots to manufacture the trucks, obviously it helps the bottom line for that company, but also the raw data, the real world data, can then be used in a much broader area. And you talk about a robot that can look at a CAD drawing and then can then go out to assemble it without the part, without reprogramming. A further area links in with Bezos' Blue Origin space. Why go to space? Well, if you can do things in space which are really high value added, it's worth doing. And one is the manufacturer's ZBLAN fiber optics. These have very low signal loss, up to 100 times lower than silicon fiber, only when manufactured in non-terrestrial areas. If you can manufacture these in space, obviously there's an enormous value added associated with that. but you need to get robots to do it because it's very expensive to have a person in space. So there are potential areas where combining the pieces can be done. So just to conclude then, in terms of summary of the AI focus in manufacturing, I've considered really the production processes mainly and its potential there. But if you look at manufacturing more generally, energy is critical and energy inputs and how to optimize the use of energy. The supply chain is also very important. AI will have an important critical role here. Quality improvements, we've seen the quality improvement with respect to some of the work in terms of, say, Siemens Hamburg plant, but also in predictive maintenance. Going forward, physical AI is absolutely in its infancy. It will be some time before we see this coming through, but you can see the potential, even if only part of this makes a breakthrough. And the Mitsubishi example, it shows where it can be done. So finally, just to kind of conclude with respect to some of the barriers, with respect to the adoption of AI, and The Economist had an article there again in January, which talked about, Lord, make me productive. At the moment, AI is not working to the level that its potential exhibits. However, it is likely to occur. And the World Economic Forum have highlighted some of the issues between skills, availability of data, the mismatch between capabilities and operational needs, particularly in a manufacturing environment. And as you know, there probably is a bubble in AI, but the investment is likely to push through such that in the coming years, AI will have a major impact in the manufacturing sector as we move forward. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Dennis. Very exciting talk, but I think we can move to Katal talk and we have a question and answering at the end. Is that okay?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name's Cathal Hoare, and I'm a research fellow based in University of Limerick, but also a member of IFORM. Member of IFORM now for quite a number of years, and my own background is as a computer scientist. But when we look at this image, which Dennis has shown already, I think we see the breadth of the activities that IFORM is undertaking. So everything from improving the design of products through more efficient design processes, managing the life cycles of products, making the life cycle more efficient and sustainable, and also then the efficiency, improving the efficiency of the execution of processes. And I suppose also elements like operator in the loop and so forth. So I exist in, I suppose, the 2 o'clock position there. I developed something called the IFORM recommender system. And originally the IFORM recommender system worked in the domain of additive manufacturing. So metal additive manufacturing using laser bed powder fusion. So I'd like to talk today a little bit about the development of that recommender system. I suppose some of the lessons that we learned along the way during its implementation to reduce things like technical debt, so that ultimately we developed this very flexible architecture, and indeed so flexible that we have been moving, out of just purely additive manufacturing and applying this recommender platform now to the agri-food sector. So just for people who may, I suppose, not be wholly aware of what additive manufacturing is in the context of metal additive manufacturing. It's a technology that allows us to create complex geometries and surface finishes out of metals like titanium alloys. And it's found applications in domains such as developing medical implants and in aerospace and lots of other domains as well. So we have a couple of examples here of, I suppose, applications of metal additive manufacturing. On the left-hand side, we can see, I suppose, some medical implants made from an alloy such as titanium. And we can see then, say, the intricacies of the surface finish there, where you've got, say, lattice structures that not only improve, I suppose, the weight distribution and so forth of the medical implant, but also then can promote things like bone ingrowth, which then ultimately gives, I suppose, a better use of that medical implant, or a more reliable use of that medical implant. And on the right-hand side, then we have, I suppose, uses of additive manufacturing by Boeing in developing, in this instance, a satellite bus. So basically, a common framework for a family of satellites, general purpose satellites that Boeing are developing. And again, the advantages of additive manufacturing in that case are, for instance, lightweighting. So because entire parts can be created, whereas previously there would have been the extra weight of fasteners and rivets and so forth that were holding these pieces together. Those elements can be removed, and that improves then, I suppose, the overall structural integrity, but also improves the weight, which is a very important thing in space engineering. So then, how do these printers work? So again, just as a computer scientist, I'm kind of always in awe when I see the hardware side and get to move away from the keyboard a little bit. So ultimately, what we have here is a schematic on the left that shows the process, and then a photograph of the build chamber of one of these laser bed powder fusion printers. So if we look at the photograph, we can see in the lower center, there's this area where a build plate would be mounted, and that's basically the area that the printing is done to. In the back, we have a recoater, and that recoater takes metal alloy, again, I keep coming back to titanium, but other alloys of steel and so forth, and spreads a very thin layer of that powder over the build plate. And that's smoothed then by a recoater blade. And then in the ceiling of the build chamber, we can see these ports, and behind some of those ports is a laser system, which then fires and melts the powder in some pattern that's been provided by a CAD file. And that whole process then can be monitored using cameras or other forms of sensorization, and generally very large amounts of information are produced by these systems, and that information then can be analyzed. We seek to analyze that information in real time so that we're able to provide feedback and decision support to operators. So when we identify a defect, we're able to suggest some course of action to the operator that they might take in order to either mitigate against the defect, or if the defect is too severe, to, I suppose, stop the build process, which in itself is advantageous because you end up saving on materials and energy cost and get to start again. So this is a video of, I suppose, the process in action. And I suppose the thing that you see with this is, it's a very dynamic process. There's the powder itself is granular. It's being, I suppose, zapped, for want of a non-technical phrase, by a high-powered laser that's generating effects like splatters. So those little sparks that we see are sparks of molten titanium. They essentially have to fall back to the floor of the build chamber at some point, and things like this can have an effect on the quality of the build. So I suppose then, just to speak to that video, what we're doing there then is observing this process using sensors. We're collecting that data, and our recommender platform then is analyzing that data in real time to give advice to the operator. And then just to, again, I suppose, to mention a new application of the recommender platform, I suppose, going from one form of powder to another, we're working with another research center, Research Ireland Centre, called Vistamilk, which focuses on agri-food technologies. And we're looking then at applying the same recommender platform that we had to that domain. And on the right-hand side, we can see a spray dryer, which is a huge piece of equipment. This one is based in Moore Park in Fermoy. And we're working with the researchers there in order to essentially achieve the same goals that we had for the recommender platform in doing defect detection and again advising the operators on how best to, I suppose, ameliorate those defects as they arise. So when we implement a system to apply machine learning or artificial intelligence to additive manufacturing or indeed spray drying, there's, I suppose, the machine learning part is really only, it's a significant, but it's not the only thing that's going on. The steps that have to be carried out, I'm sure everyone who's been involved with machine learning will be familiar. There's the whole data collection side. There's data preparation and pre-processing. There's the learning itself. And then there's the production of those results in such a way that the results will be interpretable by the operator. And while this, is a nice linear sort of a transformation, there are a lot of friction points that can occur along the way here when we're developing our machine learning models. So obviously we have the challenge, I suppose, of selecting the correct algorithms, understanding how best to apply machine learning to the process that we're trying to implement. But there are other friction points. Some of the significant ones, and I suppose in our experience, some of the real difficulties were about accessing the information. Do we have the data in the correct format? How do we prepare that data? Can it be accessed at the right time? So if we can, in the case of additive manufacturing, have access to the data, but after, much later into the process or after the process, that's not really going to help us if we're looking to do real-time analysis. And then on the other side, these machine learning algorithms are producing results, but how do we make those results interpretable? How do we express those results? How do we explain those results in the language of the domain that the machine learning is being applied to? So things like data visualization and how we can include the operator, how we can build trust with the operator, these are also very important steps. And increasingly then, how can we give enough flexibility to experts in other domains to manipulate those results so that they're able to produce those, able to create interpretations of those results for themselves. So again, in UL, we have, I suppose, a pool of expertise in the concept of low code, no code, which again then looks to create, I suppose, visual programming paradigms to allow domain experts in other domains to create their own visualizations of information and maybe do some processing of the results and overall improve the interpretability of the results that are being produced by the machine learning algorithms. So along the way, I suppose, as we implemented our systems, I suppose, we learned a few lessons, and I'm going to, I suppose, allude to those lessons over the next few slides as we talk about the implementation of the recommender platform. So the first was the importance of working to standards. So here we have a digital twin framework for manufacturing standards, so the ISO 23247. And again, working to standards and being aware of standards was something that proved to be very beneficial to us because basically these standards will highlight, I suppose, even before you begin your implementation, some of the areas where you'll find those frictions and also make suggestions on, I suppose, the things that need to be tackled to remove those frictions. So here, I suppose, with this digital twin framework, We've got the three layers. So I suppose at the bottom, we've got the actual physical hardware. Then we've got the device communications entity. So both for ingestion of data, and if we're implementing a digital twin instead of a digital shadow, also then being able to change the state of those physical tools. Then we've got, I suppose, the business logic. So operations and management, applications and services, and remote access that we can have. But perhaps more importantly, in the standard were these verticals here that span across the digital twins three layers. Concepts such as data assurance, knowing that your manipulation of the data is being validated, and that you're still working with valid data. The importance of security, of course, is always to the fore, but also then a very important one around the area of data translation and data exchange in order to allow systems that we develop to work with other systems in the ecosystem. So out of that, we developed an architecture for our recommender system, and it's made up of, I suppose, two key parts. There was a digital twin shadow, and there was a decision support system, which was a rules-based system. And basically then a key goal for what we implemented was to make sure that we were using as much off-the-shelf or I suppose standardized software tools, database tools, deployment tools, and so forth. So in that instance, we deploy using Docker. We're using several different types of database. So there's a standard MySQL database in there someplace, but we're also using Influx as a time series database and Neo4j as well, then to capture, I suppose, the complexity of the relationships between the data. The entire thing is developed using Python and Django, and then we use Grafana increasingly for developing the user interfaces that we have. So then to look at, I suppose, the architecture and why it was that we kind of chose this structure. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the key difficulties, I suppose, along the way has been access to the data itself from the hardware. And having the ability to combine that data or fuse that in-process data that's coming at us with high velocity and high volume in real time, and fusing that with other information about materials, about processing conditions, and about the parts design. So that data ingestion part is a key component. We have a data model, which is implemented as a graph structure. And then we have a service-oriented architecture where we can plug and play different analysis modules depending on the types of defects that we want to look for. And that gives us a very flexible structure, essentially where the data model is it can be subscribed to by individual analysis modules. They're looking for their own different types of defects. But most importantly, then, those analysis modules are enriching the graph structure that we have as well. So they're adding information to that graph structure. And as this graph structure evolves over time, on the decision support system, we have a rules-based system, essentially where the enterprise itself can define patterns of observations that are being captured in the graph. So essentially those analysis modules in the digital twin, they're reducing those large amounts of information into a series of facts or observations. And then that might be, that a particular spike in temperature on one part of the build plate is seen in combination with evidence of powder streaking or whatever it might be. So we're reducing the data to a series of facts, but those facts are also described in the domain that we're applying the recommender system to. That then allows the operator and others in the enterprise to define rules. Those rules can be applied to the graph and can trigger then recommendations. So essentially the rules are encoding the expertise of the enterprise itself. The graph structure, I won't dwell on this too much, but it's a pretty picture that it basically conveys an awful lot of information. So again, we have, I suppose, the context that we can define. So talking about the individual parts, the individual layer that we have that we're at in the print process. I suppose the aggregation of these into a print job. And then we have the idea that for a particular part at a particular layer, there can be detected defects. There can be measurements about that part at that particular layer. And then there can also be recommendations that have been generated by the rule system. And over time, this builds a rich picture of the manufacturing process. And then that information can in turn be queried over the course of several builds to improve the accuracy and training of the machine learning algorithms that we're applying. So to take an instance of a defect and defect detection, here we're using image analysis to look for powder streaks. So if you remember in the description of additive manufacturing, essentially we were talking about how the recoater would produce a smooth layer of powder and a very thin layer of powder, and then the laser will be applied to that layer. However, sometimes a defect can occur where powder will clump or a tear can occur in the recoater blade. And that then leads to, you might see it as a very faint line here, a defect where you have a ridge or a gouge of powder. And this then can affect the quality of the printed part because you might have an excess of powder sitting over where the laser is going to treat. So initially, our approach to this, we created an analysis module that took imagery from the chamber. We masked off the parts themselves so that we were only concerned with the powder bed. And then using computer vision approaches, we thresholded the view. We had to do some light balancing and things, thresholded the view, and then applied half analysis to that so that we could detect the feature in the powder bed. Now, essentially, we shouldn't have been seeing any features on the powder bed except for the outline of the parts. So when we saw when we see a feature like this, we then know that this is a defect on the powder bed. And then we can analyze that feature and we can predict which parts will be impacted by that defect. And that allows us to then generate a recommendation for the operator to, for instance, suppress the printing of those parts. Now, when we go back to our view of machine learning, we can see this particular line across the bottom of the process. And that's basically, I suppose, where information about that particular defect is being written into the database. So essentially, over the course of numerous prints, as we detected this defect using our computer vision approach, this now gave us an awful lot of samples of recoater defects. And that in turn gave us new training data so that we could investigate other forms of machine learning, such as deep neural network approaches, in order to develop and deploy new forms of machine learning. And then just to, I suppose, see a little bit of the view of the defects that we have. We have the recommendation being generated in this case because there's been a drop in laser power, but also the importance of presenting the information to the operator so that the operator is able to, I suppose, interpret where these results are coming from. And then I'll just finish with a shameless plug for the iForm Digital Tools website. So here you can see a selection of tools in our toolbox. It's forever expanding and growing, and find out a little bit more about the work that we're doing in iForm. And of course, we're always more than happy to engage and answer any questions that you might have about that work or how it might be applicable for what it is that you are doing. So I think that's it from me.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, thank you, Dennis and Katan, for your two very exciting presentation with lots of detail. So now we will stop recording and we take questions.